Welcome to Meditating with John Vervaeke. We do this every weekday mornings at 9:30 a.m. Mondays, we alternate between a new lesson called a Dharma Day. Today's a Dharma Day. And next Monday will be Upaya Day, in which we review the entire ecology of practices. If you're joining us for the first time, please continue sitting with us. But what I recommend you do is immediately go to the description in the notes for this video, and you'll find links to previous lessons and previous sits. Immediately do lesson 1, and then every Saturday or Sunday or whatever day you happen to have off, do another lesson, and you'll very quickly be integrated with the rest of us. I would ask you all please to help me reach as many people as possible by liking this video and liking the stream to raise its visibility in the YouTube algorithm. At the end of each sit, we have a question and answer. Please limit your questions at that time to questions about this course that we're all on together. For more encompassing questions, please come to my general Q&A that's live stream on YouTube every third Friday of the month at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That'll be July 17th. I think that's it for announcements right now. And so let's get into the Dharma practice for today. This is another layering practice, and it's also a linking practice. You'll see how it layers on aspects of prajna, but you'll also see how it links again between mindfulness and more propositionally based processing. And so in a similar way, you'll find that it sort of resonates, and the pun is kind of intended with Lectio Divina. So the point about chanting is we're going to be trying to do something that's a little bit more musical. And why that matters is because music is one of the fundamental ways in which we play with how things are salient to us. And it's also how we play with the machinery by which we make sense of things, how things are intelligible to us. So it's getting it to the root. And chanting, because it is linguistic, of course, will engage the left hemisphere, but because it's also musical, pattern, open-ended, engages the right hemisphere. It's very conducive, as you can imagine, for increased insight, because insight is about getting a dynamic integration between the left and right hemispheres. Chanting is also important for what Winckelmann calls neuroaxial integration. So this is integration from sort of the higher cortex areas down to the basic areas of the brainstem. Music has that capacity to do that. Music has a capacity there because it's resonant to integrate the inner and the outer. This is why we have this notion of enchanting something, doing magic, enchanting it, filling it with power or meaning. So there's a lot to bring to mind in your intention to chant. So the difficulty with chanting, this is why I'm laying, why are you giving me all this theory? I'm laying all this in not because I want you to, I want you to build a very sophisticated intent for chanting. Because chanting, the besetting sin of chanting is to fall into sort of bob, where you just sort of, because you can do that. You can do that very easily. But if you remember everything you're trying to activate and access and accentuate with chanting, then it'll go much more transformatively for you. So it's very important that you let your stomach be open and belly breathing. It's also very important that you don't hyperventilate. Okay, so again, try to keep your breathing. Now you're going to be breathing differently than you normally do because you're going to be taking in breaths and then using your out breath to chant. But make sure you're not getting that sense of a thinness to your breath and a lightheadedness. You don't want that. You should always feel that you're well grounded. So typically, we won't do this right now, but typically where I find chanting to sort of fit in best is I've done all my moving practices, all the Qigong, the Jianzhang, the Chuan. I've sat, I've done the seated Qigong, right? I've done the rooting, I've done the flow, and then I go into chanting. So what you're going to do is you're going to inhale, and then as you exhale, you're going to chant. Now, when you do, in order to emphasize, for me, and I'm just going to introduce something to you. Again, it's an integrative practice, and it's designed to also bridge between the Eastern course that we're on and the Western course we're going to take up with the wisdom of Upaya. So that's why I've chosen this one. And it's also one that, for me, it resonates with the two symbols that I carry around. So we're going to use, from the Eastern tradition, Om as one aspect of the chant, and from the Western tradition, One, because the oneness of things is, right, sort of the epitome of the Neoplatonic wisdom tradition. Om has to do with the grounding, the emergence, the flowing into existence of things. One has to do, of course, with the oneness of things, Om is chanted lower, so it sounds like this. Om. And notice what I'm doing. So sort of my mouth is sort of rounding. Sometimes Om is actually spelled A-U-M, Aum, and you want a bit of that rounding in your mouth, Aum. And you don't want the chant to end with your mouth coming closed, right? That's halfway through the chant, so it's Aum. So I take a breath, Aum, and see, I'm rounding to closure. Sorry, I have to talk and interrupt the chant. I can't. I need a hand puppet or something over here chanting while I'm talking or something. But anyways, right, when I get here, I want to continue on with the So the part is out, right? And then the is in, and you want to feel the vibration in your chest and your abdomen as much as you can. And you're trying to get it's like the Vipassana. It's like the centering and the grounding. It's very energetic, but it's very much like getting. That's why it's a deeper note. It takes you down into the depths, right? It takes you down right to the Tao, where everything emerges from, flows from. Then in breath, and one is higher because, right, this is supposed to pick up on the. I notice how everything is an enacted image. Everything it's symbolic, because this is like the ascent. We're going to learn about the anagage that's central to the Western tradition, and so this one's higher. One, and when I'm pronouncing the N, I try to feel sort of how I try to feel all at once the oneness of everything, and how everything is one. That N is like the pronouncing of everything's determination. See, there's a lot happening. So one cycle would look like this. So I inhale. One. What I tend to notice when I do this is that my Om tends to get deeper also. I mean, like in pitch, as I get further into the practice, and the one gets a little bit higher. And what you also, and you can feel the prajna. So although prajna tends to me to be more in and out, this is also not just in and out, it's up and down. So you've got the emergence from Om and the emanation from one, if you want to think about it that way. So there's this creative tension. The Greek word is tonos. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to enact in the chanting, you're trying to enact sort of the fundamental grammar of being. You're trying to enact it symbolically, but it's not just a symbol that refers. You're enacting it. It's a symbol that participates. And that's where you get the transformation. Now, because you're doing something that has this conceptual aspect to it and has this linguistic aspect, you can see how it's bridging into the propositional, but the musical, the coordination with the music, the coordination with the breath, the rhythm, the actual way Your metabolic energy is being aroused. All of that is also moving it into the participatory. And of course, the up, down, and the in, out is transforming the perspectival knowing. So all of this, you're trying to do this, and I'll review this again with you on Wednesday and Friday. You're trying to do all of this in chanting. Try not to have chanting there's other things you can be doing, like other things you can chant with. I'm just giving you an example. And I'm trying to give you one that will fit the course. That's why I've chosen this one. It's also the one I tend to prefer in practice, because like I say, it will bridge between the Eastern traditions we've been making most use of right now, Buddhism and Taoism, and it will bridge into the Neoplatonic tradition, which is, as Vervaeke argues, it's the spiritual grammar of the West. Okay, so how is that for everybody? I hope that makes sense. I'll do it one more time. All right. So in breath. One. And throughout, right? And this is part of I'm feeling the flow in my body. I'm not losing my flow. I'm not losing my root. And this is really important. I'm feeling, again, what's the tenor of my mind? Is it getting thin and wispy and starting to race? Or is it feeling rich and rooted? If it's rich and rooted, I'm chanting well. If it's getting thin and wispy, I'm starting to hyperventilate and spin off. Or if it's getting dull and sort of closing in, then I'm falling into sort of just a rhythmic, almost like a lullaby, and lulling myself towards sleep. So you don't want the lulling, and you don't want the wispiness. You want that sort of rich rootedness, right? And you know, for those of you who can sing well, you want that sort of that rich tonality to be a way of embodying that richness. Try not to think of this as a musical performance, even though there is a lot of music going on. My hope is that we can figure out some way in which we can do this and we can hear each other. We can do it collectively, because that then brings out the final dimension that chanting brings to it, which is the deep integration between individual and the group. Because what happens when you're chanting, especially when you don't try and make it a musical performance, is that the various chants take on a life of their own and start to spontaneously harmonize with each other. That's if people don't really try to do it. Okay, so I think that's it. So what I recommend we'll do is the following. I recommend what we'll do is the following. I'm going to do the moving Qigong exercise just to act as a bit of a bridge, right? And then do the open and closing motion that I've taught you. Then there'll be silence for a bit, right? As you find your center, find your root, find your flow, find your focus. Then I'm sorry, I'll interrupt, and we'll chant for a bit, and then we'll go into whatever silent practice you want to engage in. Okay? All right. So let's set the timer. Begin. Let's begin chanting. One. Now begin your silent practice. Slowly come out of your practice, trying as best you can to integrate what you cultivated in your practice with your everyday consciousness, cognition, character, and communitas, perhaps by reciting the 5 promises to yourself. So we have a couple questions. One question is, what schedule do you recommend doing all of these different practices? So every day there should be Vipassana or Metta. I like a 3 cycle, Vipassana, Metta, Prajna, but you may only want to do Prajna once a week, perhaps, maybe only twice, but definitely you should be alternating every day. There should be Metta or Vipassana. And remember, always do a bit of Vipassana to get into Metta. Before the practices, before doing either Metta or Vipassana or Prajna, I recommend that you do all of the moving practices, all the Qigong practices, both the standing ones and the sitting ones. So do those, and then go into your seated practices, your seated practice. I would like to incorporate the chanting into every time we sit. I think it's good. It's a good practice. It also helps some people who are struggling with sleep. It's a kind of energizing practice. But if you find it's getting you a little bit too racy, then maybe hold off on the chanting for a bit. But I'm going to, as we meet to sit, I'm going to always do a bit of chanting every time. So once I've got sort of the core 4 set up, chant, do, as I said, either Vipassana or Metta, or however you cycle in Prajna. Maybe once a month, do the meditative questioning just to remember sati, the 5 factors, and especially vigilance. Lectio Divina, I practice at the end of every time I sit on my own. We don't practice it that way except on Upaya Day. If you can, I recommend you do Lectio Divina after whichever seated practice you do. So I think of chanting as going from conceptual propositional into mindfulness. And I think of Lectio Divina as a helpful way of moving out from mindfulness back into more propositional conceptual thought. So chanting in and poesis, the making, it's at the root of our word poetry, the making, poesis coming out. And of course, there's deep connections, of course, between chanting and poesis, poetry. So I recommend that. I'm going to teach you also walking next Dharma Day, a walking meditation. And I recommend you use that in conjunction with the standing Qigong practices. And before you sit, again, that one, I do Tai Chi every day. You could do the walking every day if you wish, or I recommend doing it at least 2 or 3 times a day, because it's also an important bridging practice between being seated or standing and moving around in the world and taking mindfulness into motion. So I hope that answers your questions. Now, I want to be very clear about something. You're not going, at some point, I'm going to have offered you, sorry, don't take this the wrong way. I'm going to have offered you too many things. Again, because I'm not, the expectation, who cares what I expect? The expectation is not that you're going to be doing all of these things. The expectation is, again, you're going to cultivate and curate an ecology of practices that is based on the principles we've been talking about. We want some core mindfulness, some core movement, and some core bridging practices. We want practices that will layer. We want practices that have a complementary relationship to each other, like metta and vipassana, or moving and sitting, and or speaking in silence. Notice all the tonas, right? We want all that complementarity. We want the layering, and we want the linking. But you're going to ultimately, this is like evolutionary adaptivity. All creatures adapt, and they adapt to who they are and where they are. So we're all going, all of us, all sentient beings, all of us together are doing this. But that doesn't mean that we all do the same thing. We all have to adapt to who we are and where we are and where we're going. So I hope that answers your question. I hope that's helpful. I'm going to give you, you have to especially remember this when we move into the wisdom of Hypatia, because then there's going to be a whole independent tradition, and how these are going to sing together and work together for you. I can't tell you, other than giving you these basic principles that help to set up the appropriate system of constraints so that the evolution will happen, and it will take on a life of its own. It will become a Tao to you, a way, a self-rolling wheel. So Brett, pleasure of doubt. When rooting, can you please elaborate the listening part? What does this mean when the part of the body we're focusing attention on makes no sound? The listening is being used metaphorically there. I'm trying to connote there the difference between hearing and listening. You're at a party and you hear your name and then you listen to it. That act of it, you can convert hearing into listening. You can convert seeing into looking. You can convert touching into feeling. That's the move. That move where you, instead of things are just sort of like this, I'm speaking metaphorically in hearing, they go like this. They're sensitized, they're coordinated, they have a kind of what Moll calls a cognitive unison towards the area. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about listening. I'm using it metaphorically. I'm using it metaphorically because the other words are already being used. Like looking is already being used. But in the looking, you're supposed to not just be seeing. Again, you're supposed to be looking. You're supposed to be getting into that co-presencing with something. But the listening is designed to get you to, you've already made that contact, and now you're trying to take it up another notch. You're really trying to not just hear, right, or touch what's going on here. You want to listen to it. You want to feel it. You really want to taste it with your mind. So I hope that helped. Rohad Jonas, I can't wait to start learning about the cognitive biases. Any ideas when we start with that? Yes. So the Hypatia course will probably spend a couple weeks. So it goes through Epicureanism into Stoicism. They're layered onto each other, and then into Neoplatonism. And we will be doing the cognitive biases when we get into Stoicism. So that should probably be sometime in mid-August, I imagine. So hang on. Like I said, I wish I could do it, just teach you all of it right away. But everything has to be done in its due course. Kelly Myers, welcome again, Kelly. This week I've been experimenting with hand drumming in a similar integrated way to the chanting practice you just taught. Any thought about using drumming with chanting? I don't have any experience or expertise. I have sat in a Sufi chant that is accompanied by drumming. I found it very powerful. So it seems to me like it should work. I know that shamanic practices often incorporate drumming with chanting. So Yeah, but I'm sorry, I don't have any particular experience or expertise other than just being a recipient of somebody else who knows how to practice that integrated thing, the integration of the drumming and the chanting. So I hope this is helpful to you. That's always my intent. I want to thank you all for joining. I want to thank my dear friend and techno mage Amar, my beloved son Jason, who's always here pinch hitting for me. Please subscribe to this channel to be notified of the next video. You'll find links there to the lecture series, Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, and to the Dialogo series of Voices with Vervaeke, that will develop some of these themes that we're developing in this course and situate them within a more encompassing framework. Please invite others who might benefit by sharing this video. Brett is here. He asked an excellent question. Please get involved with the Discord server. The link is in the description. Normally, I would be on the Discord server tonight because I do a bi-weekly Q&A at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. But tonight, I'll be on Peter Lindbergh's Stoa with Akira the Dawn. He has taken some of my work and created a meaning wave, which is a sort of musical production, a genre of music that he has, I think, mostly invented. So there's sort of a launch party for that. So I'll be at that tonight. But I strongly recommend you go on the Discord server. You'll find people here who are doing these practices. You'll find people who are involved with more encompassing framework that I've talked about. Please, it's a great community. It is taking shape in a wonderful way. We do this every weekday morning at 9:30 Eastern Time. Please remember, continuity of practice more important than sheer quantity of practice. There's no enemy worse than your own mind and body. No friend, no ally, no true companion on the path better than your own mind and body. Be lamps unto yourselves and to each other. Take good care, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow.